Welcome to the Joint Planning and Zoning Commission, Old Town Design Review Committee, and Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting scheduled for Tuesday, December 1st over Zoom. We have a quorum present virtually for the Planning and Zoning Commission at this time. I want to give everyone listening from home some instructions on how to speak if you desire to. If you are viewing on your computer or through the smartphone application, press the Raise Your Hand button. If you have called into the meeting, press *9 to raise your hand to speak. Once your hand is raised, staff will bring this to my attention and we will let you speak after the item is read and the staff presentation is given. If you are having trouble using these features, please email planning@cityoflouisville.com or call 817-938-4409 for assistance from staff. The first item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of November 17th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? And if not, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by John. We're going to do a roll call vote now. William?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
And I don't see Francis. Is Francis on?
And no, she is not on the call right now.
Okay, so we have 6 ayes. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda for tonight is a public hearing, the rezoning and special use permit. This is in consideration of a special use permit for a gasoline service station on an approximately 2.386 acres, being 1.306 acres out of Lot 1, Block A, GTM Edition, and 1.08 acres tract of land out of the A.G. King survey. Abstract number 698, located on the southeast corner of State Highway 121 Business and South Valley Ridge Boulevard, Zone Light Industrial District, as requested by Morad Elwer, CEI Engineering Associates, on behalf of John Zanoni of Zanoni Holdings, LLC, the property owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to still the screen real quick. Murphy Oil USA is looking to build a new gas station on the southeast corner of State Highway 121 Business and Valley Ridge Boulevard. This area is currently used for soccer practice fields. The special use permit won't encompass the entire platted lot here, but only the northwest portion as shown on this aerial map on the screen. The proposed development will feature a 2.8 thousand square foot convenience store and 8 gas pumps. As part of this special use permit, the applicant is also proposing to provide 40 additional parking spaces, which will serve the existing soccer practice fields, as well as a location for a soccer locker room and storage facility that'll be built later. This site has a lot of conflicts along the public right-of-way with both underground and overhead utilities. Despite these challenges, the applicant is proposing to provide 44 trees, which is 20 trees more than the required 24 trees required for this development. The majority of these trees will be located at the back end of the lot, which will provide additional shading for these soccer parking. The applicant is also proposing a 100% brick and stone elevations. These are in neutral colors as shown on the screen right now. There's no freestanding signage proposed. I apologize. All of the proposed freestanding signage will be low-profile monument, as well as additional signage on the building. The soccer facility, which will be built at a later date, will match the architectural style and elevations as shown on the screen right now.
Zoom meeting.
Planning staff did analyze this location for the appropriateness of a new gas station. Though there's a gas station just to the northwest across the street, there is no gas stations within 2 miles either east or west on the south side of State Highway 121 business. Because of this, staff recommends approval of the SUP. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also present and available to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, before I open the public hearing, does any commissioners have questions for staff?
Yeah, I've got a question. Is there really that much need for another gas station on 121?
So as far as the need, when we're looking at it, kind of as I mentioned before, there's really no gas stations on the southern end of 121. To the west, the nearest gas station is on the other end of I-35 east, and going east, even further, it's near Sam Rayburn on the other end. So there's really not a lot of gas stations in this stretch of State Highway 121 business. We felt with this, not a lot of gas stations in this area, and with the applicant providing additional parking for those practice fields, this would be a good use for the land.
What's the normal spacing for gas stations in general?
On a case basis, we don't have a particular metric we use. We just analyze each site on its own when they come in for an SUP request.
I will say though, with our code overhaul process, the way that it's drafted right now is we're saying for automotive uses that are 1,000 feet from other automotive uses, they would not necessarily trigger an SUP requirement as long as they met certain design standards.
And the parking for the soccer is going to be built right now?
Right, the parking for the soccer will be built with the gas station.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no more questions for staff, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please follow the instructions I had given earlier and let staff know.
Do have the applicant present here tonight. I see, there we go. Mr. Morad Elweir. You should be able to talk now.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. How are you guys? Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm the applicant here from CEI Engineering. Hello?
Gotcha.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure. So yeah, I'm the applicant here from CEI Engineering. If you guys have any additional questions or requests other than what John had elaborated on, please let me know. I'll be more than glad to try to get some help for you guys or get you some answers.
Are there any questions for Mr. Elweir?
I was wondering if is that in a floodplain? Are we going to be building on a floodplain there?
Yes, that is in fact on a floodplain. We'll be doing a study. We are currently working on a study right now per city requirements and per FEMA requirements to make sure that we are safe and build according to FEMA and city requirements for building in the floodplain, which we're raising the finished floor elevation by 2 feet.
Well, wouldn't the concern be the tanks more than anything else?
The tanks are outside of the flood zone where we have the tanks located.
Okay.
So technically where the tanks are right now are not in the flood zone. So there should be no issues with that. It's more of the convenience store itself.
Okay.
The applicant did provide this information when we're going through the SUP review process, and our city engineering has looked at the flood study for this area.
And just so I can pull it up here for you all. This when the aerial loads, you can see that this is the intersection here. And you can see there's a small bit on the corner that's actually the 500-year and outside of the regular floodplain. And I apologize, that's not displaying properly, but let's refresh that. So there is a flood plain on the property, but where they're putting their tanks will be outside of it, and they are doing some reclamation.
Okay.
Do we have anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
I mean, the only thing I was going to ask too, kind of like with what William was talking about, was, you know, I think a few months ago, we denied Quick Trip because of proximity to other similar businesses. So but I think isn't there's a Quick Trip location right at Main and 121, correct?
That's correct. If I recall the Quick Trip case correctly, it was in our the gateway to the city, and that was a large consideration with that location.
And the other thing we considered at this site was its feasibility for other types of development. Based on the minimal area that's outside of the floodplain and what could be elevated from the floodplain, that was another item that staff looked at. And so we felt that based on there wasn't as many gas stations within a close proximity, and there wasn't any on the south side, that there wasn't so much of a proliferation at that particular location.
Okay, all right.
So what's the tie-in with the soccer field? How did that come about? Is that just being a good neighbor, or is there some kind of shared agreement?
It's on the same platted lot, so it's all currently one platted lot owned by the same owner. So just as a part of the SUP, being a good neighbor, there's parking issues with the practice fields currently. So being a good neighbor, you know, with this SUP providing those 40 additional parking spaces will help with those practice fields,
Okay.
which are private practice fields.
Okay, thanks.
And we do have Nathan Toon here who would like to speak.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Well, now I can't.
We can't hear you very well, Nathan.
Sorry,
We can hear that there's someone speaking, Nathan, but it's too soft to make out any of the words.
You might try calling in to the number provided with the meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think he's working on getting called in. I'll mute him while he does that. Okay, we do have someone raising their hand. Give me just a second here. So Drew Boshiers, who's also with Murphy's, is here and would like to speak. Give him just a second to connect. And Drew, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I tried calling into the webinar ID. I think Nathan's probably having the same problem. And the ID code is not valid. The 983-315-6778 is 3159-6778 is not valid. I'm not sure what kind of issues. Nathan is our landlord. He's the landowner. And I'm sure he was going to comment on the question about the land use with soccer field and our use, but he may not be able to call in either.
So the call-in webinar ID should be 983-3159-6778.
Right. Yeah, I tried that twice and it said it's invalid.
That is very strange. That is the number that they gave us.
Yeah, just tried it again. It said it wants a participant ID. And once I pressed pound for that, it says the number you entered is not supported.
All right, let me.
Can you hear me now?
Boom.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, sorry about all that. I guess my microphone is not working very well. But I had raised my hand prior to some of the questions being brought up. And, you know, as it pertains to the entire property, it's a 15-acre piece of property. The soccer field probably, you know, is about 3.5 acres of it and is in the floodplain currently. Like Michelle and John had kind of touched on, the kind of a little bit more than an acre on the hard corner is out of the floodplain and is developable. And so, you know, the soccer club, we typically have anywhere from 30 to 50 parents, you know, come in to watch kids and pick up kids after practice. And the city has allowed us to park on Valley Ridge. And, you know, we've kind of created a little bit of a traffic jam as far as picking kids up from practice goes, and utilizing the old building that used to be for the driving range that was there probably, you know, for 4 to 6 years ago. So, as Michelle mentioned, there's really not a whole lot of options on this site as far as, you know, highest and best use goes on the hard corner. You're really talking about an acre. And on Business 121, you've got, you know, roughly 50 to 60,000 cars a day. And so kind of felt like this was definitely the highest and best use given some of the challenges with the entire property, and also saw an opportunity to alleviate some traffic, parking and congestion issues with the current soccer facility on site. So that was really, that was kind of the premises behind the development plan here.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this, Michelle?
Let's see. I don't see any more raised hands.
Okay, then I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing and open up for commissioners. Any discussion? And if there is no discussion, may I have a motion on this item?
Motion to approve?
Motion
Second.
by William,
Second.
second by Karen. Roll call vote. William?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
And Francis is absent. We have 6 ayes, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item will be appearing at City Council on December 21st for a second and final public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, since the Planning and Zoning Commission has already been called to order, I would go ahead and suggest now that the Old Town Design Review Committee Chair and the Zoning Board of Adjustment Chair call their groups to order, please. Let us know if you have a quorum.
Yeah, so just as an FYI, it's a little bit hard to see, I know, but we do have a quorum for both the OTDRC and the ZBOA.
Okay,
Okay, a quorum being called for the Old Town Design Review Committee meeting being established. I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Quorum being present for Zoning Board of Adjustment, I call that meeting to order.
Okay, great. So at this time, we will go ahead and turn the meeting over to Karen for her presentation.
Karen, you might be on mute.
Yep, there we go. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit with all of you this evening. I am going to share my desktop in just a moment to go through the PowerPoint presentation. The presentation reflects the material that was in the packet that I believe you all received prior to the meeting. I'm looking forward to sharing that and hearing your ideas that are sharing to work.
Karen, we were hearing a little bit of feedback when you were speaking just then. And I did mute everyone else, so I think it might have been coming from your computer.
Okay, I am hearing a lot.
Are other folks hearing that same feedback? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Is it coming through now as well? There was a little feedback coming in with you, so I'm not sure of exactly.
I'm getting quite a bit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In about every other word.
Kind of like, it's almost as like somebody's phone's too close to the laptop.
How is the sound now?
Much better.
Better so far.
Okay, very good. So can you all see the PowerPoint presentation at this point?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. I will go through the presentation. I'd be happy to have y'all ask questions as we go. And I know that Richard and Michelle and John may have some comments as well. And some of you, those who are on the 2025 committee, have seen an earlier version of this information. So, you know, I hope we can just have a good informal conversation. That being said, my computer is only showing me some of the video images. So Michelle, if I could ask for your help in letting me know if somebody is wanting to speak or if they raise their hand in your in the system that you're monitoring, will that work?
Yes, I don't know that you all have the raise your hand function as you're all here as presenters, but if you want to just kind of indicate that you'd like to speak, or I guess you can unmute yourself and pipe in.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. I just, since I know there are more people on the call than I can see on my screen, I just don't want to leave anybody out. So, okay, well, let's get started then. And the 2025 update process, I know that we have talked about this in the past, and y'all have, many of you have been involved in participating. We started this process last year in 2019 because we were coming up on the 5-year anniversary of 2025 being adopted, which was adopted in 2014. And so after 5 years, we wanted to have a chance to review progress and see what needed to change, and a lot has changed in those 5 years. So what you see on the screen right now is the flow chart that we developed in the summer of 2019 as our process for updating the plan, designing feedback materials, engaging the community. We wanted to do even more of that than we did in the first round of developing 2025, build agreement, draft the plan, review it, and adopt the update. As part of the outreach, I'm going to just highlight a few things that I think many of you did participate in, but we really wanted to make sure that there was a great deal of engagement across all different parts of the Louisville community during the fall and winter of last year. We had a great deal of input when we developed the 2025 plan to start with, but there were some communities within Louisville who weren't that involved. For instance, some of the Hispanic community, the Chin community, some people living in apartments, some of them were just not as involved. So we wanted to have some more explicit outreach to make sure that they all had a chance to participate. What you see in this pyramid here is all of the different kinds of input that we used during the process, beginning with online input, moving up forward to what ended up being called the Touchpoint events in January of this year. One of the really cool things that I must say staff created, developed, and completely implemented was Marco's Big Move, because we also want to make sure that kids who live in Louisville are participating. And so Marco's Big Move was a basically comic style book explaining the 2025 moves in the context of Marco, who has just made a big move of his own to Louisville. And so that was one of the many creative ways that we did the outreach during this process last fall and winter. The Touchpoint event in January at the MCL Grand, I know a number of you were there. The pictures you see here show just a few of the activities. There were questions in all of the different rooms about blue sky ideas. What would you dream if you dream big? Feedback on how we've done on 2025 since its adoption, computer input, video, as you see, and a set of Touchpoint speakers who presented really challenging and creative ideas on many of the topics that are covered in the plan. Again, you see we had a special Marco's room for the kids there, and Claire Powell is helping Marco to invite the folks into that room. We followed up with a similar but smaller event the next night at Castle Hills. As you all know, Castle Hills is being looked at for annexation, which could come in the next couple of years. So we wanted to be sure to engage them as we went through this process. So we had a similar event there. Overall feedback we got, there's tons of information, but the summary is just the bullets that are here. Very strong support for continuing the vision that was established in the 2025 plan, and ideas for things to extend that and to enhance and to make changes. Of course, as you know, what happened after that. We were scheduled and presented to the City Council at their retreat in February. They gave us direction on some of the big picture priorities, such as the goals, the big moves themselves. And soon after that, we ran into COVID. So a lot of things happened that we were not expecting. There were delays in the process, new focus in terms of budget, given all of the things happening with COVID. And with COVID in the summer, an increased awareness of issues related to inclusion and disparity. So,
Karen,
yes.
I hate to interrupt.
Go right
We're
ahead.
only seeing the first slide of the 55. Have you been?
Yeah. Yes, I have been advancing those slides.
Whatever you're touching now is what's causing that feedback.
What was that?
When you leaned forward and manipulated something, we got feedback.
Okay.
Now none.
Okay. Can you see the different pictures now?
No, ma'am. I'm still seeing
okay.
It's a cover.
Yeah. It's not in presentation mode what we're seeing, Karen. It's where we see the templates on the side.
Okay.
There it goes.
F5.
There we go.
Let me see if I can share it in a different way, or maybe I can, actually, maybe I can move these pictures over here and we can just look at it on this side. How would that do? Can you see it there?
No, you're back to the cover page now.
Now you're moving through the slides.
Now you're moving through the slides.
Okay. I will just, if it's all right with you, I'll keep the pictures over here in front of the other little slides and try it this way, and hopefully that will be large enough. Let's see, maybe I can make, if I can make it any bigger. Is that better?
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm not sure what's going on with that, but let's see if this will work. So I was talking earlier about the update process, design, engage, build agreement about the direction, draft the plan documents, review those drafts, and then adopt the updated plan. In the slide that you see here, you see the variety of outreach that I was talking about before. We wanted to make sure there was a great deal of involvement by all the different parts of the community. City staff did a huge job of going and reaching out to individual groups and organizations and parts of Louisville that had not been included before. And you can see here on the side the Marco's big move on the side there. We had the Touchpoint event at the MCL Grand, and as I mentioned, we had workshops, rooms for input in all the different parts of the MCL Grand, really. Claire is standing here with Marco at the front of the Marco's room for the kids to participate. There was video sharing, online input, and the set of speakers here who brought insights from around the country for the issues that the plan is considering and will be updated. We had, as I said, a similar event on the 30th at Castle Hills to get the involvement and input from folks in that community who we expect will become part of the Louisville community upon the annexation of that area. So there's a really very extensive amount of involvement that went on during the fall and early winter, really. The direction overall was support for the approach we've taken in Louisville 2025, continued support to move forward, and ideas on a lot of specific steps of what to do next on areas where we've already accomplished quite a lot. After that, we did brief the City Council at the retreat in February, as I mentioned, and at that point, we ran into COVID. concerns about the budgets, increased awareness of issues this summer as far as inclusion and issues of disparity within the community. And so all of those things have changed the schedule and certainly the timing of what we had expected to do in the original schedule that we set up last summer. What we're doing at this point is proposing that each of the big moves and the strategic moves build on what we've learned from these experiences. And so rather than, you'll see some new recommendations on action priorities because of the experiences this year. Since we couldn't go out and do in-person meetings during the last several months, what we've been doing instead is working with the staff leadership to get insight on the different priorities. We've developed action items and considered the budget implications for those. And we've continued to work with all the departments on drafts that you now see in front of you as far as the objectives, the policy direction, and those action priorities. So we've had that COVID. We've been doing that virtual review and collaboration. We met with the 2025 board back in October, and then we received further city council direction later on in October, so that the direction that I'm sharing with you now as far as overall policy direction reflects the input we heard from city council at that last workshop with them. What you see in this document is that policy direction. It's obviously not the entire plan itself. You see, you know what all is in the 2025 document. There's additional background information, additional information about the process and so forth. We are working on drafting that now, but what we wanted to do this evening is share this direction, get your thoughts and comments on it, and particularly we want to keep you informed and keep you in the loop on the progress about this, because the role of all three of your bodies is very critical in achieving the vision that 2025 sets out. You've been integral to its success so far, and we want to make sure you are involved as we go forward. So with that, let me pause a moment. Are there any questions as far as any of the things I've shared so far? Okay. So what you found in the document that you received and what we'll share on the slides as we go forward are the levels of policy direction that you see listed here. A vision statement describing the future Louisville of what we want by 2025, and that we want to continue forward thinking all the way to 2035. For each of the big moves and strategic moves, there's a goal, there's a set of objectives that are still pretty broad, but they are in more detail than the goal itself. And then there are action priorities, which are specific projects or steps. Mostly, we expect these to be things that could be accomplished by 2025, so in about the next 5 years. There will be additional maps to illustrate some of those things as we put the whole document together. The vision for the plan here, the purple part that you see is really the same as what was in the 2025 plan, excuse me, other than the wording that says 2025 and beyond. And the four boxes there, those four themes of diversity, resource management, connectivity, and growth continue the direction from the 2025 plan. The wording here has been modified somewhat to reflect some of the new experiences that have happened since 2014, but the overall direction is very much in line with the 2025 plan. What you see on the list here is a change from what was in the 2025 plan. You'll remember that in that document, there were 9 big moves that were the things that were important to focus on in Louisville's future. What you see here are 7 big moves and 3 new strategic moves. Those strategic moves have been added because in the course of doing this update, we are also blending in the City Council's strategic goals that they had previously as a separate document. So all of that will be incorporated in this one document. We'll then have all of that direction. We also, as in going through this process, have combined a couple of the existing big moves. And so as we go through the presentation, I'll let you know about those. But we found that this is, we believe that this is going to be a good, clear way to focus direction as we go forward. The first big move, Green Centerpiece, obviously this continues the success that has happened since 2014. The objectives that you see here are pretty similar to what we had before, but we've tried to focus even more on the connections to the rest of the community, as you see in Objective B, and on the idea of getting Louisville residents who have not used Green Centerpiece, who have not gone to Lila in the past, to make the connections with them as well. So with each of these objectives, as I said, you can see these are broad but more specific than the goal. So they help to take that step from the biggest picture goal to the objectives. And then on the next page, you see the action priorities. And as I said, these are intended to be shorter term actionable items that will achieve the goal that was stated previously. For each one of the moves, there's a set of action priorities, and I'm not going to try to read through each of these individual bullets for you this evening. You have them in the packet, and I'd be happy to get any feedback or clarify anything for you if you'd like to, if there's anything that you'd like to ask about. But otherwise, I'm going to try to just hit a few highlights on each of these as we go through. As you know, I think the Green Centerpiece Master Strategy was an initial recommendation in the 2025 plan. That was completed. It was updated once. There have been a lot of changes about the role of LISD, particularly the role of UNT in that process. And so the action here recommended is to, again, update that strategy, update the nature center concepts to focus on issues for the Louisville residents themselves, since there's less involvement likely in the future as far as UNT is concerned. Most of the other action priorities here build on what was recommended in the past. This is the second page of action priorities for Green Centerpiece. Let me check and see if anybody has questions or comments on Green Centerpiece. Okay. On extending the green, again, this is one that ties right to Green Centerpiece, but continues it out to the community. Some of these objectives have changed a fair amount because of the progress Louisville has made on things like 10-minute walk to the park. So you see Objective D, for example, really putting an emphasis on that idea of the healthy green lifestyle and enhancing those connections throughout the whole Louisville community. The action priorities also are updated based on work that's been done by parks and by the community since the time 2025 was adopted. For instance, you can see that next to the last bullet about the 10-minute walk to a park project that y'all have been working on going forward. Again, education, incentives, structure for partnership, all of these things really do require not just the city government to take action, but partnerships with other organizations, with school districts, with nonprofits, faith-based, all of those other groups. So the action priorities recognize the importance of that connection. Are there questions or comments on any of extending the green?
Karen, I raised my hand on, and I think you've brushed on some of the idea of regional connectivity. Was that an item that might come up in transportation later on, or is...
There's two things really, Jack. One is indeed when we get to the last of the strategic moves called Connected City, focuses particularly on the mobility and communications kind of connections to the region. So there is some more of that that you'll see back there at that point. With these priorities, there's ideas of partnerships to get people access to update these plans. I'm not sure that it's really explicit about the connections between Louisville's park investments and those of the other communities and the larger region. So that's a really good point, Jack. I know that Louisville is doing that, and things like the paddling trail are a partnership with 5 or 6 other cities. But that's a great point to elaborate a little more on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, the next item is Old Town, and I'm sure some of y'all will have some particular questions and comments here. The big move of continuing investment in Old Town, that goal is the same as was stated in the 2025 plan. The objectives, though, have changed. In the 2025 document, there were some specific objectives about doing studies about the market and some things like that to try to get new investment in Old Town. What we've changed now and what this draft shows are really the two objectives, emphasizing the two important roles that Old Town has. Firstly, as the central place in Louisville, the central part of its unique identity, the place that people are gathering, the kind of things that create a regional destination. So the idea of the objective of Old Town being the central place for the Louisville community. The second part of this, the second objective here is enhancing the core of Old Town, but expanding that development pattern to create even more memorable places within the Old Town District and connecting over to the DCTA station and to the west to I-35. I know that those areas are ones that y'all have focused on in the Old Town planning in the past, but we felt like it was important to really make clear that that's one of the objectives of this big move, is to think firstly as a central area and secondly as an extension out to those other key destinations. The action priorities for Old Town build on what was there before. I know, Mary Ellen, you had one question about the catalytic development sites that are that you see in the second bullet here. When the plan was done originally, there was an analysis done of those development sites. Several of those have now been purchased by the city and are seeing new redevelopment. And so that's the reason for that bullet talking about updating that analysis to see if there are additional sites that could build on the work that's happened in the last 5 years. You see here also continuing emphasis on residential, on restaurants, grocery store, et cetera. And then on this second page, looking at things about partnerships and activities that will bring people to Old Town, using Wayne Ferguson Park and other public spaces to promote health, vitality, and safety, creating a common ground as the place where Louisville can gather, as we've worked out in the wording that you see here, the place you'd come to celebrate, to learn things, to speak your mind, or to mourn in the case of some kind of a difficult situation. And the last bullet you see there, adding more about Louisville's heritage and its diversity and finding ways to celebrate that in Old Town. I know there's obviously those of you on the DRC probably have some other questions or thoughts or comments on, so let me pause there and see what you all would like to share on that point. Questions that make sense to y'all?
In my activity with Old Town, I certainly the design component and the design elements would not necessarily be appropriate to list in detail here, but I certainly think these actions will lead to kind of a secondary review and revisit of the things that have been listed in the design guidelines, and that will be an interesting challenge to follow up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Jack. And Michelle mentioned earlier the overall development code update that's underway now. And as that starts to move forward to the commissions, there will also be an opportunity to think about some of those requirements as part of that process.
Very good.
Other comments on Old Town? Okay, this big move forward on diverse and thriving neighborhoods, this is one where we have changed the moves. In the 2025 plan, there were two different moves. One was about existing neighborhoods, one was about new neighborhood choices. At this point, we recognize that most of Louisville is largely developed, and so it's no longer the case that there's going to be big chunks of new development or new neighborhoods coming into play. And so combining those two into one big move here that you see diverse and thriving thriving neighborhoods makes sense, we believe, to address all of the issues that are important to all the neighborhoods and to the people who live in all of those areas throughout Louisville, and that includes Castle Hills. You see here on Objective E, including Castle Hills and its residents as an integral part of the Louisville community. As that annexation process moves forward and is accomplished and under the current schedule that's expected to be in 2022, we want to make sure that there's good, strong connection there, and that those folks are clearly feel part of the community, and vice versa, that everybody feels like they're part of one shared kind of objective. You can see objectives here about new kinds of housing choices, especially around the transit stations, the DCTA stations, and through redevelopment of aging strip commercial properties. Some of those are really ready for refreshing, and we think that's a good place to create some different kinds of housing that might not be as available in other parts of Louisville today, and that in turn will help the neighborhoods around it continue to be desirable and thriving. There are quite a few action priorities for this big move, but I want to really highlight the first one here of the housing study, because one of the issues that's had a great deal of discussion this year has been disparities and has been diversity and equality or inequality. One of the things that we have heard throughout the region is that housing is becoming less and less affordable, and so that is an issue in Louisville as well. So you can see the first priority here on these action priorities is to do a study to really get a good factual understanding of the current issues of supply and demand in Louisville, and use that to develop an action plan to meet those needs and to address any kind of identified inequities that may show up as part of that. So that means looking at housing from the standpoint of all the different sorts of families and residents that are in the community, different makeup of families, single-person families, seniors, families with kids, multi-generational, lower income, all of those different factors. There's not a good study right now to be the basis for figuring out what's the right thing for Louisville to do. So that's an important one that will be coming forward as part of the implementation here. I mentioned annexation of Castle Hills earlier, so I'm not going to repeat that. This third bullet, which takes up a lot of space on the slide, is really about this idea that you just see here highlighted: essential neighborhood resources and services. As we've all lived through the pandemic and everybody has been much closer to home, we realize there are probably things that people need or could benefit from close by, in walking distance or biking distance, or just more accessible to them in their own communities. And so we're not trying at this point to say exactly what those essential resources and services are, but what we're saying here is get the community and the service providers involved with the city to develop an idea of what those should be and how can we fit them in or provide them both in new neighborhoods and as things change over time. So you can see a lot of examples in the rest of that paragraph of what we mean by that, but that's really a study to come, but it builds on the experience I guess we've all had this year of trying to find things that are closer to home than you might have thought about before. Another set of actions to address neighborhood needs. We've had area plans for both Old Town North and Southwest Louisville. These are some of the other areas that have been identified. The idea of using the data from that housing to update the targeted neighborhood designations will help us to use equity as part of the planning and as part of public investment in these neighborhoods. So there's a real stress on addressing those concerns and doing it based on data. Several of these continue action items that were in the 2025 plan and continue to work on those. A last point that I will mention here, you see this bullet about sustainability considerations in new housing, in adaptive reuse and rehabilitation assistance. Throughout the plan, there are action items that you'll see in the individual moves that tie back to the idea of sustainability. We still have the full big move about sustainability, but we're trying to weave that throughout all of the other different areas too. And so as you see the document, there will be a little symbol, a little icon of a leaf to show that here's an item in this move about neighborhoods, but it's supporting sustainability as well. I think that's our last page on that. So any questions or comments on the diverse and thriving neighborhoods? Okay, moving on to economic vitality. And this is as was noted in your background material, this is a new name for this activity. Over in the other plan in 2025, it was called Economic Employment Centers, and it was very focused on job creation in those particular large conglomerations of businesses. As we went through the discussion this year, we realized that there's a lot more here than just looking at those major employment centers like the one that you see on 121 as you enter Louisville from the southwest. Instead, this also focuses on education and job training for Louisville residents. It involves small business support for development of existing businesses and support for entrepreneurs. So there's a lot more to it than just those particular physical places. As a result, it's been renamed to talk about economic vitality for the entire community. So you can see that in the name and in the goal, and as well in the objectives that are listed down below. The action priorities here, one of these, the first point here of regularly reviewing the city's economic incentive programs to make sure those are really closely aligned with these objectives. As we update the 2025 plan, we'll work on making sure that when the city's looking at tax abatements or other kinds of incentives, that those things are geared to support the objectives that are in this plan. As I mentioned before, there's focus on education providers, partnerships with them. Obviously, the city doesn't manage the school district, but there are a lot of opportunities for that connection so that folks who live in Louisville get the support, get the training, get the education, have those skills to be able to be successful. The last action priority you see also relates to another connection we're making time around, and that is in terms of the library. The library is updating its strategic plan now, and so that will also be coordinated with this update of 2025. So you'll see connections in both directions as far as the library as well.
Karen, may I ask here, just for clarification for myself, the definition for employment center is really been expanded, is kind of what I'm hearing you say. And it has a lot to do with not just providing for places for folks to work, but it's also preparing people to work as well.
And yes, Mary Ellen, this is the employment centers themselves in the 2025 plan were particular physical locations, like the big distribution area that's there on 121. And so when it's talking here about the success of those employment centers, that still focuses on those geographic areas. But what's different here is the addition of the other kind of economic emphasis back to vitality of all of the different residents, businesses throughout the city, as well as those major employment centers. So it's looking more broadly. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily going to dot little tiny employment centers all over the map in an area, for instance, in terms of supporting small business. I think that the Economic Development Department's idea is that they will be doing that throughout the city. You don't have to be in a defined employment center to benefit from that. So there's kind of a couple of levels being recommended in here. Does that make sense, Mary Ellen?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. Other comments on economic vitality? Okay. A lot of ideas here about partnerships. So it's not just the city on its own trying to carry out all of these things, but rather working with other folks who have those skills and expertise. Big Move Mix is another one.
One question on technology.
Sure.
Has there, considering the current COVID pandemic going on, has there been a higher force to looking into more technology partnerships with what's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm looking back here as far as those the partnerships on some of that. The technology and lifelong learning that you see here on the public library side of things, the the business park liaison, working here to make communication for those businesses and those employees at those large employment centers. So there are a couple of points there. The other thing is, again, the third strategic move about Connected City has a lot of emphasis on technology. So we'll get into more of that when we get to that part of the discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Obviously, some of the things like the small business development workshops can be a way to help get people resources and training and information about technology as well as other skills. Okay, the Big Move 6 is another one where we've combined a couple of moves from the 2025 plan. There was one called Identity Focal Points, and there was one called Marketing and Communications. And you can see that these two have now been combined to really focus on the idea of creating and sharing Louisville's unique character. In addition to those 2 points, the identity and the communications, we've added the idea of place so that this big move focuses on places that have unique character within the city and strengthening that character, helping Louisville be distinctive because it has a lot of particular unique areas. The objectives that you see below here have tried to combine and mesh all those together. One of the things that you see emphasized here is celebrating and communicating Louisville's diversity and heritage. So there's more emphasis on that than I think we saw in the 2025 plan originally. The map that you see here is a draft, and I'm afraid that at this scale it may be hard for you to see exactly what all of these mean. What we've done is separate out the idea of gateways from the idea of identity focal points, so that those two things have somewhat different character. And each of the ones that you see here, rather than being a vague little bubble or a circle, are a particular geographic area. That's a reflection of work that's happened since 2025 was adopted. For instance, as you look along I-35 here, the northern gateway here, the southern gateway here, these two bubbles that you see here, these are all reflections of the areas designated by the I-35 overlay district. So this is more precise than the earlier plan because of the work that's happened in the meantime. There are a set of action priorities here that relate to all of those gateways. They focus on engagement. They focus on the idea of using design, public art, open space, all of those things to create a distinct identity for each one of these areas, and then to continue to improve gateways wherever they come in, and not only for people driving a car, but also people arriving on a trail or arriving by riding their bike from somewhere else. Each one of those gateways has and identity points has a particular set of action priorities. For the gateways that were in the earlier plan, like Southern Gateway, we've updated these action priorities based on what's happened since then with that area. Similarly, in terms of the Northern Gateway, and this includes both sides of I-35 at the northern part of the city, so it ties into master development around the lake, but it also focuses and includes the area around the DCTA station. So that's why it's got those several combinations there. The Eastern Gateway is a new one. This would be at the place where you're coming into Louisville because you're coming into Castle Hills. And so that's an opportunity for a new gateway, marking a new area in the community. The Southwest Gateway is that kind of large distribution, industrial kind of area I mentioned before. If you're coming from DFW, this is your gateway into Louisville. And so we felt like it needs to be included and distinctive as well for particularly all the people coming from the airport. That's a big place for international arrivals, as well as people coming into work from other parts of North Texas. The identity focal points, this one and the next one, Central I-35, this was included in the original 2025 plan. It's more detailed now because of the work that has happened through the I-35 overlay. Similarly, on the Main Street subdistrict, that's designated in the overlay district. The focus here is trying to collaborate with Medical City Louisville, look at this as a way to leverage some major assets and resources and have have some unique economic development that could really come on all sides, all four corners of that interchange. Crown Center Identity Focal Point, again, relates to Castle Hills and creates a new focal point in the area that's being developed out there. Distinctive places are a reference here to places that are smaller than those major gateways, or include smaller ones as well as those major gateways, because we want to emphasize the idea that even in neighborhoods, even in smaller business areas, even in a redevelopment of an old shopping center, that we want to create places that are distinctive, places that the nearby residents will go to, will be a part of their lives, that they will identify with them, they will love those places. And this is one of the things to make Louisville a thriving community long-term. So there's those recommendations. Finally, the communications recommendations, again, build on what was there before, but much of what was there had been accomplished. So we're strengthening that, and we're strengthening the idea of the heritage and art, public art aspects of this as well. Questions or comments on this big move? Okay, then the last of the big moves is sustainability. The definition you see on the screen now is the same one that was in 2025 for Louisville. With the sustainability initiative, this is another interchange or interaction that's going on. As we update 2025, the city is also creating a sustainability action plan. And so those two documents are also going to be linked. You see the idea of the two broad objectives here. But when you look at the action priorities, each of these bullets, each of the in green here is one of the topics or the headings, the categories within the sustainability action plan. So these are the big picture ideas, and then that plan, which is being finalized, being drafted now for consideration concurrent with this update. Each of these ties back to that action plan. Will have a more detailed specific items and timelines related to all these different aspects of sustainability. And so that includes water, waste, equitable opportunities, health and wellness, transportation, green space and extend the green, city operations.
Erin, you're starting to break up pretty badly.
Okay.
Again, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm not sure what's causing that. Is that any better? I'll try not to move. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. Okay, so green spaces and extend the green, city operations, and community outreach and education. So all of those are parts that will also be organizing the action plan for sustainability, as well as being reflected here in the 2025 update. Comments or questions on sustainability?
Are there opportunities, I guess, in order to do some redevelopment, since we do have an older inventory, but is there a way to maybe get some grant money or something to do the redevelopment and incorporate, energy efficiency and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the effort There's a consultant who's an expert on sustainability plans, who's worked with cities around the country, who's working with Louisville on this update. And so he and they are looking at some of those specifically in terms of, I'm kind of scanning through here for some of the wording, about the sustainability measures for the community. And if you think back to that item that was in the diverse and thriving neighborhoods that it's focused on, whenever the city is looking at revitalization or redevelopment, that the new development incorporate green design and energy efficiency. So yes, that is part of what we're looking at there.
Okay.
Okay. Other on sustainability?
Yeah, is there anything included in this as part of the recycling efforts with the city of Louisville?
Thank you.
It seems like if I just pull my neighbors down my alley, it's about 50-50 whether or not they even participate in recycling. So is there anything to improve that?
Mm-hmm. This item here that you see about city operations, reducing waste and consumption, is part of that for the city government, for the city facilities buildings. The bullet that you see here, this third bullet, is encourage the reduction of waste through voluntary programs and education educational. I know that Mindy White, the city sustainability coordinator, could give you a complete presentation just about all of the ins and outs of recycling these days and what the economics are, and how what the best practices are to encourage people to do recycling. And so there's a lot more detail behind that one bullet that you see here. There's a lot more detail on how to help increase that recycling when you in that sustainability action plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen, my only question, and it may come up later in the presentation or more in the details to follow, ideas regarding lighting strategies for efficiency and placemaking, and any somewhat related but somewhat different as well, any rollout of new technology like 5G or continued fiber optic?
Okay, so the fiber optic and 5G, hold on that one till we get to that third strategic move. The connectivity is where that idea comes into play more directly. In the back a couple of slides on the distinctive places and for all of the gateways includes the issues of lighting and wayfinding signage and public art and design to create those distinctive places. And so all of that would also focus on that energy efficiency aspect. The other thing which I will just mention briefly is that the development code overhaul, which came up a little bit earlier, will also have some new recommendations about lighting, the use of lighting and supporting dark skies initiatives. So that's going on a little different track, but it's going to support the issue you're asking about.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, I don't know if you want to add any more to that, or Richard.
No, just we are looking at lighting and specifically just requiring downlit and looking at light, preventing glare and light obtrusion without going and doing a full dark skies ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is sustainability. And now we're moving into the strategic moves. As I said earlier, these are ones that bring in a number of things that are somewhat more operational for the city, but nonetheless, they touch the full community, not just internal to the organization. And by bringing them in here, that means that the city council will have one coordinated document with all of these different objectives and goals included. So the first one of these is values-driven organization. And the idea here, and I'm sure that y'all are familiar with this Louisville way, the approach throughout the city operations of valuing people, building the future, and serving every day. This strategic move here focuses on things, as you see, of maintaining a stable and experienced workforce, having a workforce that reflects the community's diversity, giving people the ability to perform innovatively and effectively, and including and engaging the residents of Louisville so that they can then support the programs that come out of those discussions. A number of action priorities here tie back a bit to the Louisville Way. They also focus on the Listen, Learn, Lead recommendations from this summer. That was the Mayor's Commission talking about issues of inequality and inclusion. And so here in this strategic move, you see a number of recommendations that focus on making sure that the full community is engaged. You see some others as well about things like a planned future bond program to invest in the recommendations of the plan that you see here. Public arts plan, it is being implemented and it's updated every year, and it is implemented with the involvement of the community. And I think Mary Ellen, you had a question about how that's done, and I know the city's communications department has a group of folks that reach out to the community, and in the case of each opportunity for public art, to engage them and and part of the recommendation out of Listen, Learn, Lead is to tie that even more closely to the local communities in an area and to their history and their heritage. So that approach is emphasized here in these action priorities. The second strategic move, data-driven. This is something also that the city of Louisville, I think, has been a leader in, using information to drive decisions, to make the most efficient use of tax dollars and of other resources that are available to the community, and trying to respond quickly and effectively to changes in technology. So you see, for instance, this objective F about making sure that Louisville is socially, technologically, and economic advance, looking at operations to be nimble, being able to respond quickly when something comes up that's unexpected. The action priorities here build on the work that the city's done on things like the dashboard, which not only collect information, but share that information with the public in real time. So it builds on that, strengthens it, tries to extend that out even further. And as one of the items here about strengthening collaboration with counties, with the hospitals and medical providers, obviously is something that we've learned this year as an important way to communicate and coordinate across the community and across the different service providers. Continue the conversation on racial inclusiveness. That builds on the listen, learn, lead, as I mentioned earlier. Maintaining the technology for the city employees to use to make sure that they can be up to speed. The use of Legistar, I think I saw a question about what that is. That is the online system that all of the boards and commissions are using, and that keeps track of the documents and of the decisions that all of those make. And the last one I think is really an important one, which is to do a process like the touch point every 5 years to engage the community and make sure that the city's actions really do stay close to what the folks in Louisville want to see and what they think is important. So we see that as a continuing effort. Questions on data-driven? Okay, then the last one, the strategic move on connected city, and this you can see the goal, use technology and design to be a connected city. This includes a number of different things, but some that have come up in the conversation already, multimodal connections for transportation. So we're thinking not just about automobiles, but bikes, rail, carpools, car sharing, so shared ride kinds of things, the fixed route and on-demand services, all of those different options that people want and need for mobility, so that everybody in Louisville has choices for that. Using information from global best practices to benefit from changing technologies, using innovation to reduce the negative impacts of changes in technology. So this is one of those objectives that gets back to a comment earlier on about what are we thinking about with technology. Helping Louisville organization, residents, and businesses stay connected through technology, focusing on inclusiveness. So all of these really build a new emphasis for this plan on the opportunities and the need for that technology and for response as that technology changes. The action priorities that you see on this slide emphasize some of those ones about the physical connections and the mobility connections, but also the communication connections for assistance during a crisis. Working in the community to look at places where there are gaps in the system for bike or pedestrian travel, asking people in the community where they want to go by bike, and how can we figure out a way to make those routes be available and safe and easy to understand. Removing barriers to new technologies, complete streets, all of those that you see here, I think, are ones that some of you probably are very familiar with and involved with. So let's see, this is I think, the last, looking at communications and connection by way of the city's library, the library information and access and facilities and resources there, training on racial inclusiveness, and then including that collaboration with a lot of other folks, so that Louisville is really well positioned to help the people in the community in times of crisis. So I think those are the action priorities for this big move. I know a couple of you had comments earlier on, and I said that topic is more covered by this strategic move. Are there comments and questions or additional suggestions for this before we move forward? Okay, great. So with that, let me give you the timeline that we anticipate. As I said, what you're looking at tonight is really the most important, the heart of the plan, because it's the direction that's contained. We are on the timeline now from October through this month of having these kinds of discussions with y'all and with other key boards and commissions. The staff and the consultants are working on drafting all the other chapters that go into the complete 2025 update document. In January and probably continuing on into part of February, we will be using online and virtual options to connect with the community. I wish we could do another thing like the touch points, but I don't think that's going to be feasible in January or February. So we'll be doing that virtually. The draft of the plan will then be reviewed by City Council at their retreat in March, and then beginning at the end of March and going into continuing through April will be the opportunity for key boards and commissions to make recommendations before the City Council considers taking action. Planning and Zoning Commission, you are one of those that will be asked to make a formal recommendation. I know that the Planning Department will certainly be keeping all of the three of your boards involved and informed as we move forward, because as I said before, you all are critical to implementing the plan, and so we want to make sure that you're involved with that that input and that you're in the loop and completely engaged as much as possible as we finalize the work on the document. Questions about the timeline? Okay, Richard, Michelle, anything I forgot to cover on any of it? Nope. Okay. All right. Any further questions or discussions on anything related to the discussion this evening?
The only thing I'd like to add is just I want to thank all of our members of our boards and commissions that are present tonight. The 2025 was so successful because of the involvement of the community, and we've kind of put that on steroids for this update. And even with the challenges of COVID, we've gotten a tremendous amount of input. So many new ideas were interjected into the discussion to really make the update bigger and better than the original document. So Louisville will benefit greatly from this process, as we did from the 2025, and the dividends will continue to be paid over time as we implement these plans. I just want to thank everyone for their involvement.
I want to add, Richard, that the 2025 plan is not a static document. It has to change as things come by us. And this pandemic has really changed a lot of our direction, but yet we're still headed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. You're definitely right that this is a living and changing document, and I think as most of you know, I work with a lot of different communities, and I'd have to say that Louisville is one at the very top of the list when it comes to involving people to create the plan and then going right ahead and implementing and carrying it out. And so this is, I think, going to be a great next step to the work that you all have done over the last 5 years or so.
I just wanted to follow up with a big congratulations on all the work done so far. I know it's been a different world, and to do this type of work, given the circumstances, is truly remarkable. I'm looking forward to future updates and the opportunities that we can share and review ideas and see the progress that's being made. Really looking forward to it, but congratulations.
Thank you. Other comments? If not, let me stop the screen sharing and send the floor back to the chairs or to the staff. I'm not sure what other items there are at this point for this evening.
We don't have any more items on our agenda for this evening. So if we could just get our chairs to adjourn their meetings, we can start with OT, DRC, and then ZBOA, and then PNZ. Oh, you're on mute still, Jack.
That mute is always tricky. With a great meeting accomplished, I will call the group to adjournment.
Take a motion.
Do I need a motion? Can I get a motion from the whole town?
I was on mute. You got a motion. Heather will
Do I hear a second?
second it.
Moved and seconded?
Yes.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you so much.
ZBOA, does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
Me.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye. Aye.
That's forward adjourned.
We are adjourned.
Okay, planning and zoning. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by, is that Alvin?
Who's John?
John, sorry. Second by John.
All the time.
We will do a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
And Francis is absent, so we have 6 ayes, 1 absent. Motion carries, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Night.
Good night,
Good night. Thank you.
Good evening. Bye-bye.
Warm.